Hello, cruel, cruel world. My name is Dr. Shaham Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. You can call me the ominous Shahamanous. Now, I came across this clip of Joe Rogan recently, and he was talking about why women fall in love with serial killers. So this is a question that I've been asked about frequently. I've talked about it on TV, magazine interviews. I've even made some videos on it on my YouTube channel. So this video is basically explaining exactly that, why some women fall in love with serial killers. Now, some of you are probably thinking, hang on, ominous Shahamanous, I've seen videos about this already on your YouTube channel. My response to that would be, the reason I'm making these videos is because I want you to understand these topics, start thinking like a forensic psychiatrist, and to a degree, to take over the world. Not going too great. Okay, let's get started into the video, and I'll tell you how accurate I think him and his guests are.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Do you ever do a demographic breakdown of who watched, like, does Netflix have a demographic breakdown of who watches those crime shows? Because it's mostly women, isn't it?
Anecdotally, that's what everybody says. There was a funny bit on Saturday Night Live the other night that was like, you know, what do ladies do when they're home alone? You know, wait, you know, then they like throw on the murder shows.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know. It's a weird thing. And when we were making Night Stalker, we would get to the point in the interview where it's finally, you know, I would ask everybody, like, okay, so for some reason or another, this guy becomes like the Jim Morrison of serial killers, because like when he's paraded through the courtroom, all of a sudden he's got these like groupies and fans, and they're sending him, and I had gotten access to all of the like naked pictures that the girls are sending in, you know, because this author had written a book about him, had all this stuff. And I was like, and you always have to kind of ask that awkward question of like, so why does this guy become this sort of crazy sex symbol object of desire, you know, obscure object of desire?
Okay, so first off, I would say that there seems to be kind of two different topics that are being slightly conflated or confused here. There's why women love true crime, and there's why women love serial killers. They're both valid and interesting topics, I think, but I just want to focus on the latter, why women love serial killers. If you're interested in why more women are into true crime, I've done videos on that. Go check it out on my channel. Okay, so we psychiatrists, we like to sound cleverer than we actually are. So believe it or not, there's a term for this, of women that fall in love. Well, not just women, but people that fall in love with bad boys or criminals or killers. And it is hybristophilia, which comes from ancient Greek terms. Literally translated, it means being in love with tall toothbrushes. No, I'm only kidding. It actually comes from the Greek word hubrisine, which means to commit an outrage against somebody, or where hubris comes from. And then philia, as you probably know, means having a strong affinity or preference for. So therefore, hybristophilia, literally translated, means having a strong affinity for those who commit outrages, who commit crimes. So it basically describes this phenomena of people being sexually attracted or romantically attracted to somebody who is, you know, violent, who is basically a criminal. The term was first coined in the 19th century by a German psychiatrist called Richard von Krafft-Ebingen. Wasn't he the baddie in The Sound of Music? Anyway, he described it in his book, which was called Psychopathia Sexualis. Psychopathia Sexualis, that is a very strong title for a book. I think that guy would have been great at creating clickbait YouTube thumbnails. Anyway, but it is a real problem, hybristophilia. So, for example, Carol Ann Boone got married to, started a relationship, and had a child with Ted Bundy after he'd been arrested. So whilst he was in prison, go figure out how that all works. Charles Manson had loads of groupies. Jeffrey Dahmer had loads of groupies. So it's a very well established phenomenon. Okay, let's go a bit back to Joe Rogan, and then I'm going to tell you why this occurs from a criminal psychiatric perspective. Come on, move video. All right, let's go.
And it's always like kind of particularly with the, you know, the women who are being interviewed, but everybody. And nobody quite has an answer. Is it the bad boy thing? Is it the celebrity thing? But this is somebody that, like, you know, I think as one of the people said, this is somebody that would eat you for dinner, not like, you know, there's no, it's craziness to have any attraction to it, but yet it exists. You know, this guy has like groupies and fans.
And it's very common for murderers to get, especially murderers of women, to get all these propositions from women.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
Super strange.
And, you know,
Okay, Joe Rogan, okay, you grey-haired hippie, you're kind of acting like it cannot be explained by a handsome, gold-toothed forensic psychiatrist stroke failed YouTuber of Indian origin. There are actually some very well-known psychiatric and psychological processes and explanations. Just going to adjust this video, then I'm going to get into them. Okay, so why are some women attracted to violent men, serial killers? Enough skirting around the question like a spotty, shy teenager, too scared to ask the fat girl to go to the dance. Here are my answers. So number one, the main reason why some women, I mean, it does happen the other way around, men towards women, but it's by far more commonly women that fall in love with men who have a history of violence, is a bit uncomfortable. It's because they themselves, the women, have a history of trauma. So they've either been physically, sexually, and or emotionally abused by, say, like a previous partner or a parent. So this cycle keeps repeating, whether it's subconsciously done or not. So what I'm trying to say is that these women, sometimes they gravitate to what is familiar rather than gravitating to what is safe. But ironically, and here's the twist, they actually feel safe within these relationships with killers because the guys are behind bars. So the women get to control, they get to dominate. And maybe for the first time ever, they've been in a dynamic of a relationship where they have the power after, say, a string of abusive relationships. And because she's on the outside and he's on the inside, she gets to call the shots. She makes the decision. She knows when visiting times are. She gets to decide which items the man has. She knows where he is at all times. And that he must be thinking about her because he doesn't have other romantic options. Okay, moving on. Number two reason why some women fall in love with bad boys, with serial killers, is the notion of an idealized relationship. So they don't have to do the day-to-day mundane kind of issues that are related to most long-term relationships. There's no laundry to do. There's no hoovering. There's no having to listen to their chat about how to make the ideal barbecue steak. There's no stubborn skid stains that the woman has to bleach out of the man's undies. But I do think that it's quite interesting that there's a psychological paradox, isn't there? So these women are attracted to dominating and manipulative and violent men, yet the women want to control them. So I think that's very kind of interesting to me. Okay, let's hear a bit more from Joe Rogan, and then I'll tell you some more reasons why hybristophilia exists.
Read something about that. No, you know, Whitney Cummings was actually telling me about this. She said she read that it was something that had to do with, there was like an evolutionary benefit to getting close to killers. Like that, I think this is theoretical.
In what regard?
That the idea of, it's very hard to kill someone.
Once you have like human personal contact? Is that what you're saying?
No, that the act of killing someone, that it's difficult to do. And that it requires like someone who is, to be capable of taking another person's life. And to be close to that person means somehow or another you're protected by them, and that they're willing to kill, and that this is like something that existed thousands and thousands of years ago in our DNA, this desire to be close to killers because you were more likely to survive because there were so many killers. Like if you went back in time, you know.
Okay, I'm going to stop there and comment on what I think Joe Rogan is saying. So I take his point. It's a valid point. He's saying it's in our DNA. So presumably, I think he's talking about sort of instinct, isn't he? So he's saying that, you know, in ancient times, finding a potential mate who was safe, like, you know, in the times of cavemen and tribes, you might be attracted to a dominant male who is able to physically and psychologically to fight or physically hurt or even kill a rival for resources, for a mate, etc., etc. And even though I think all of that is correct, I also don't think it's really relevant to modern times, because finding a mate isn't an instinct, is it? It's a conscious, purposeful decision and thought. So I think nowadays people are more likely to be attracted to more suitable traits for an individual. So what I'm trying to say is that in modern society, people are more likely to look for traits that are more suitable for modern times. And also, I just wanted to make the point, this is not just women towards men, it's also men towards women, it's also men towards men, it's also women towards men who identify as vegan. Oh, please don't cancel me, I'm sorry if I've offended you, but you get what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is, in modern times, things that are more reliable, more suitable, more appropriate, more relevant than the ability to kill would be, you know, fitness, having a six-pack, healthy body, fame, success, wealth. Now, I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke. Is that right? That doesn't rhyme. I ain't saying she a gold digger. Anyway, let's get back into Joe Rogan, then I'm going to tell you some more reasons.
A few thousand years ago, murder must have been like really common. Like when people were sword fighting all the time and
Dude,
stabbing each
there's a
other.
crazy book on this. Stephen
Yeah?
Pinker wrote this book called The Better Angels of Our Nature. And what he does is he tracks over time kind of the nature of violence in humanity.
Yes.
And he's like, okay, once upon a time, there's Cain and Abel, and Cain kills Abel. Like, the murder rate is like 50%. So actually, we've been trending up ever since then. And like, it literally looks at how, over time, the incidence of like violence has actually, even though it doesn't seem like that, dramatically decreased in humanity.
It does seem like that. It does seem like that. I think we just focus on the instances of violence because we have mass media.
Right.
And because,
it's fascinating.
Yeah. And if it bleeds, it leads. So there's.
But why is that?
Okay, I'll take over from here, Joe. I'll take over from here, long-haired hippie. So that's a really interesting question. Has violence decreased worldwide over the centuries? And Joe Rogan seems to definitely think it has. I think it's a complex question with kind of lots of different factors and caveats. Yes, I would agree overall that there has been a decrease in violence. So I'll give you some specific sort of reasons why there's been a decrease in violence. Reason number one, decrease in violence over the years is less warfare. Whilst major wars still do occur, their frequency and the scale has greatly declined, arguably ever since World War II. Number two reason why there's less violence in the world is because of technological advances, and globalization has made large-scale warfare less attractive to nations. So in the past, going to war would have given you something, would have given you the ability to kind of dominate and take over and rape and pillage that particular nation. Now it just makes you look bad in the eyes of the EU or the wider world, and you can be kind of criticized. And also the effect of having to use nuclear weapons, which is what you have to use nowadays, is pretty intense. We all know, we've all seen Barbie, or was that Oppenheimer? The number three kind of aspect of violence decreasing over time is homicide rates. So I do think, and I think this is what Joe Rogan was mostly talking about, globally homicide rates have steadily been decreasing since around the mid 20th century. And this trend is particularly notable in developed countries. And this is due to things like improved living standards overall and law enforcement practices. And also social progress. Social progress. I think movement for human rights has increased, so has equality and peace as a concept. All of these things seem obvious to us now, but they probably weren't 2 or 3 generations ago. I just want to say something. Even though I do think that violence, particularly homicides, has decreased, to throw a proverbial spanner in the works in a non-violent manner, I would also say that we can't forget there are new forms of violence that didn't really exist decades ago. So terrorism, cybercrime, domestic violence, they've kind of, I wouldn't say they didn't exist, but they've certainly increased in recent decades. And it's quite hard to compare them because there isn't much historical data to go on. And some regions, even though the homicide rate has decreased worldwide, I think we have to accept that some regions, some country, it's actually increased recently due to conflicts, political instability, inequality. So, for example, you've got armed conflicts in Afghanistan, you've got new waves of terrorism in Burkina Faso, you've got homicide rates have increased in El Salvador, you've got closing time at Wetherspoons. So I guess what I'm trying to say is violence has decreased. That is correct. I agree, but it is more complicated than just that. Okay, let's get back to Joe Rogan.
That's something that, making The Night Stalker or even making Silk Road, it's like, why are we fascinated by the underworld? The sort of like the worst things that people do to each other. Like, what is it? And you're participating in it. I'm participating in it. Anytime we're watching it, making it, or whatever, we are all in some way complicit in that.
Catch new episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience.
All right, chill out, Joe. Okay. So as promised, I'm going to talk to you more about hybristophilia, why it exists, other reasons why women might fall in love with serial killers. So the third reason would be the savior complex. So some women will have this overpowering natural mothering instinct, maybe because they were smothered by their own parents, maybe they had this moral kind of framework forced onto them. So to them it's a challenge. So they want to change, they want to heal a damaged individual. And what is more evil, what is more damaged than a serial killer? Number 4 reason why women might fall in love with dangerous men would be, before I say that, let me introduce you to this channel, A Schmike for Small Minds. I cover a smorgasbord of cases related to mental illness, related to offending, and the crossover between the two. Some of these are reacting to clips like me doing Joe Rogan. Some of them talking about celebrities like Dr. Dre, Busta Rhymes, grief, trauma, bereavement, Jada Pinkett Smith. Some of them are wider topics such as why you should have children. Go chickadee, check it out. I implore you to subscribe to this channel. Not only does it help me out immeasurably, but it will actually make you, yes you, more attractive to serial killers. So if you do want to start a relationship with them, it's going to help you out. Okay, back to the video. The fourth and final reason, in my opinion, why some women are attracted to serial killers, to murderers, is slightly controversial, but I have to say I think it's connected to celebrity worship and wanting the attention, wanting the fame, wanting the media spotlight. Because there are some women out there who have been in relationships with serious criminals and then gone on to try and get a book deal or a movie deal. So I'm not trying to be insulting to those women, but there's something there, isn't there? So I think what's happening in terms of the psychological processes is they're conflating being infamous with being famous. And I think that's a relatively recent phenomenon. We see it in, for example, reality TV stars. We see influencers. We see people who are famous just for the sake of it. We can see influencers who get millions of followers on Instagram. Not that I'm bitter about my YouTube channel or anything. So those are my explanations on why some women fall in love with serial killers. Okay, before I finish, I've just got a bit of advice to give to Joe Rogan. You can do a bit more research, try and understand these psychological processes, kind of get the psychological terms down like me. Keep grinding, and who knows, one day, maybe you, Joe Rogan, can have 53,000 subscribers like me. Okay, if there are any other videos you want me to react to, let me know in the comment section below. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace out.